The strangers in my penthouse stared at me like I was the intruder. After a month in Alaska, I returned to find another family living in my home. The security guard looked uncomfortable as he explained my son Gregory had sold the place. When Gregory arrived in the lobby, he smirked without a trace of remorse. "You're homeless now, old man." I needed the cash for some debts. He expected me to beg. I simply asked, "Are you sure about that?" Then I mentioned what I signed yesterday. His entire face collapsed. I never thought my own flesh and blood would betray me this way. My name is Blaze Anderson, and at 68 years old, I believed I had seen it all. Growing up in a blue-collar neighborhood in Cleveland, I started working construction at 19, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. By 30, I had started my own small construction company, and by 40, Anderson Development had become one of the most respected mid-sized real estate development firms in the Midwest. Life wasn't always easy. I met my wife Judith during those early days when I was still swinging hammers and coming home covered in sawdust. She was a school teacher with a smile that lit up the room, and a way of making everyone around her feel special. We were young, ambitious, and madly in love. We got married in a small ceremony at her parents' backyard, saving every penny for our future. Our son Gregory came along 3 years later, and for a while, we were the picture of the American dream. Judith was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer when Gregory was just 14. By the time he turned 16, she was gone, leaving a hole in our lives that nothing could fill. I threw myself into work, partly to provide for Gregory, and partly to escape the grief that threatened to swallow me whole. Maybe that was my first mistake. I made sure Gregory never wanted for anything material, trying to compensate for the loss of his mother. Private school, summer camps, the best colleges his grades could get him into, which, with some generous donations from me, meant an Ivy League education. Looking back now, I can see how Gregory changed after Judith died. Where, once he had been a thoughtful, somewhat serious child, he became increasingly entitled and demanding. Nothing was ever enough. The car I bought him for his 18th birthday was the wrong color. The apartment I helped him rent near campus wasn't in the trendy part of town. The internships I arranged through business connections were beneath him. Still, I made excuses for him. He had lost his mother at a vulnerable age. He was finding his way. He would mature with time, but time only seemed to make things worse. The first time Gregory asked for a substantial amount of money beyond his regular allowance and living expenses was during his junior year of college, $20,000 to invest in a startup a friend was launching. Against my better judgment, I gave it to him. The business failed within 6 months, but Gregory never seemed particularly concerned about the loss. That became a pattern over the years. Investment opportunities, business ventures, partnerships that always needed just a little more capital before they would pay off big. None of them ever did. By the time Gregory turned 35, I estimated I had given him close to $2 million with nothing to show for it. About 3 years ago, I began to suspect Gregory had a gambling problem. Money disappeared faster. His stories became more elaborate, less coherent. He would call at odd hours, sometimes sounding desperate, sometimes eerily calm. I started finding discrepancies in my financial statements, small at first, but growing in size and frequency. At first, I thought it was clerical errors, or maybe early signs of memory problems on my part. I'm not a young man anymore, and the fear of losing your mental acuity is very real at my age. But then documents began to disappear from my home office. Financial statements, property deeds, insurance policies. I started keeping duplicates in my safe deposit box at the bank, not wanting to believe that Gregory might be responsible. 6 months before my Alaska trip, I noticed my bank statements were being redirected. When I called the bank, they informed me that my mailing address had been changed per my request. I never made such a request. Looking deeper, I found charges on my accounts I didn't recognize, withdrawals I never authorized, and transfers to accounts I didn't own. When I confronted Gregory, he looked me straight in the eye and suggested I might be confused. He recommended I see a doctor. His concern seemed so genuine that I actually made an appointment for a checkup. The doctor, Dr. Leonard Parks, was someone I didn't remember choosing, but Gregory assured me he was highly recommended. The visit was strange. Dr. Parks focused almost exclusively on questions about my memory, my ability to manage my finances, and my daily functioning. I left feeling unsettled but was told everything was fine. Last week, after returning to find strangers in my penthouse, I made a devastating discovery. While going through the paperwork, Thomas Jenkins, my attorney and friend of 40 years, had gathered. I found documents claiming I had early-stage dementia. The papers were signed by Dr. Parks and had been used by Gregory to obtain power of attorney over my affairs 6 months ago. This power of attorney was what allowed him to sell my penthouse while I was fishing in Alaska. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Gregory hadn't just stolen from me. He had systematically planned to take everything, going so far as to have me declared incompetent. He had stolen my home, my dignity, and nearly succeeded in stealing my identity as a competent adult. As I sat in Thomas's office, staring at the forged signatures that looked remarkably like my handwriting, I realized the depth of the betrayal. The son I had sacrificed everything for had been plotting against me for years, and I had been too blind to see it coming. "You should have seen his face, Thomas," I said, my voice hollow. When I asked him if he was sure about what he'd done, he looked so smug, so certain he'd won. He had no idea what I had up my sleeve. What Gregory didn't know was that I had already signed documents yesterday that would change everything. His confidence was about to shatter completely. My penthouse on the top floor of the Wellington wasn't just a place to live. It was the culmination of everything I'd worked for. 45 years of early mornings, late nights, missed weekends, and constant stress. I built the Wellington from the ground up 7 years ago. It was my company's most ambitious project, a 30-story luxury condominium building in the heart of downtown. Judith and I had planned it together years before. Even as she fought cancer, she would sit with the architectural plans spread across her hospital bed, offering suggestions about the layout and design. "The penthouse is for us, Blaze," she'd say. "When this building goes up, we'll be looking down at the city we helped build." She never got to see it completed, but I made sure every detail of that penthouse honored her vision. The floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the river. The kitchen with the double ovens she had always wanted. The built-in bookshelves for her collection of classic literature. The master bathroom with the soaking tub where she had imagined easing her pain. I even installed the garden terrace she had sketched out during her final months, with the specific varieties of roses she loved. Living there kept her memory alive. Every corner of that space contained pieces of the life we had planned together and the dreams cut short by her illness. It wasn't just property that Gregory had sold. It was the physical manifestation of my love for his mother. Thomas had warned me about Gregory's behavior for years. We would meet for our regular lunch at Carson's Steakhouse, and between discussions of business and legal matters, Thomas would carefully bring up his concerns. "Blaze, I've known you since we were both too broke to afford a decent suit," he said during one such lunch about 2 years ago. "And I've watched Gregory grow up. You have to admit the boy has problems." "He's still finding his way," I replied automatically. The same excuse I'd been making for decades. Thomas set down his fork. "He's 42 years old, Blaze. He's not finding his way. He's taking advantage of you." I didn't want to hear it then. Thomas had never had children of his own. How could he understand the complexity of a parent's love? But deep down, I knew he was right. The signs had been there since college. Gregory's first semester at Princeton, I received a call from the credit card company about suspicious activity. The emergency card I had given him for true necessities showed charges at casinos in Atlantic City, expensive restaurants, designer clothing stores. When confronted, Gregory claimed his wallet had been stolen. I believed him and paid off the $12,000 balance. 6 months later, it happened again. Different story, same outcome. I paid. This became our routine throughout his college years. He would overspend dramatically, invent a crisis, and I would bail him out. He changed majors 5 times, eventually graduating with a degree in communications after 6 years. I paid for graduate school next, a MBA program at a prestigious university. Gregory dropped out after 1 semester, claiming the program wasn't challenging him intellectually. Next came law school. Same result. Then a series of jobs that never lasted more than a few months. His excuses were always the same. The employers were incompetent, the work was beneath him, the environment was toxic. All the while, I kept hoping he would find his purpose, his passion. I blamed myself for his struggles. If Judith had lived, maybe she would have provided the emotional guidance I clearly couldn't. If I had been home more instead of building my company, maybe I could have instilled better values. If I had been stricter, set better boundaries, been less generous, made him work for what he wanted, perhaps things would have turned out differently. But my most devastating failure as a father was enabling Gregory's worst tendencies. By constantly rescuing him from the consequences of his actions, I had prevented him from developing responsibility and accountability. My generosity hadn't been kindness. It had been weakness. What Gregory didn't know about my Alaska trip was that it might have been my last great adventure. 2 months before I left, I had been experiencing unusual fatigue and shortness of breath. My doctor diagnosed a serious aortic valve problem. I needed surgery, and soon. The procedure had significant risks at my age, but without it, my cardiologist estimated I might have less than a year left. I decided to take the trip I had been postponing for years before facing the surgery. Alaska had always called to me. The vast wilderness, the pristine rivers filled with salmon, the sense of being small against the grandeur of nature. I planned to spend 4 weeks fishing, hiking when my energy allowed, and contemplating my life and legacy. I hadn't told Gregory about my heart condition. Our relationship had become increasingly strained, and I sensed that any vulnerability on my part would be exploited rather than met with compassion. Still, I never imagined he would use my absence to sell my home out from under me. The timing couldn't have been worse. I needed stability and peace for my recovery after surgery. Instead, I returned to homelessness and betrayal. The penthouse had been my sanctuary. Now, like so much else in my life, it had been taken by the son I sacrificed everything to raise. As I sat in Thomas's office reviewing the evidence of Gregory's systematic theft and fraud, I felt a heaviness in my chest that had nothing to do with my heart condition. It was the weight of decades of self-deception, of refusing to see what was right in front of me. "There's something else you should know, Thomas," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "something I haven't told anyone, not even Gregory." I pulled the medical reports from my briefcase and pushed them across the desk. Thomas scanned them quickly, his expression growing grave. "When is the surgery scheduled?" he asked. "Next week, Thursday morning." Thomas looked up, his eyes filled with concern. "And the prognosis? If all goes well, I could have many good years ahead. If not," I let the sentence hang unfinished. "Does Gregory know?" I shook my head. "That's part of why this betrayal cuts so deep. I came back from what might have been my last great adventure, to find my son had not only stolen my home, but left me without a safe place to recover from heart surgery." Thomas reached across the desk and gripped my hand, a gesture of solidarity from the friend who had stood by me through every major event of my adult life. "Well," he said with a grim determination, "let's make sure you have your home back before that surgery. And let's make sure Gregory finally faces the consequences of his actions." What neither of us said aloud was that this might be my final act as Gregory's father, forcing him to finally grow up, even if it meant our relationship might never recover. The Oakwood Extended Stay Hotel became my temporary home after discovering my penthouse had been sold. My 3 suitcases from the Alaska trip contained everything I now owned: clothing, toiletries, fishing gear, and a few personal items. The room was clean but sterile, with generic furniture, thin towels, and walls that couldn't quite muffle the sound of the ice machine down the hall. I spent that first night staring at the textured ceiling, unable to sleep despite my exhaustion. The betrayal kept replaying in my mind. Gregory's smirk, his casual cruelty. "You're homeless now, old man." The words cut deeper each time I remembered them. The next morning, I came downstairs for the complimentary breakfast, more out of habit than hunger. The woman at the front desk noticed me picking at a stale muffin and approached with a fresh cup of coffee. "Thought you might need this," she said, sliding the cup toward me. "You look like you didn't sleep a wink." Her name tag read Martha. She was perhaps in her mid-50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner that reminded me a little of Judith. "Thank you," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "It was a rough night." "New to extended stay living?" she asked, sitting down across from me. I nodded. "Very new. As of yesterday." Something in my tone must have conveyed the gravity of my situation, because Martha's professional smile softened into genuine concern. "Well, we've all got our stories, don't we? I'm the front desk manager. If you need anything at all, you just ask for Martha." That small kindness from a stranger nearly broke me. I thanked her quickly and retreated to my room before she could see the tears welling in my eyes. Later that morning, I called some old friends and business associates to explain my situation and begin the process of rebuilding my life. The responses were not what I expected. "Blaze, I spoke with Gregory last week," said Frank Wilson, my friend of 30 years and occasional golf partner. "He mentioned you've been having some cognitive issues. Are you sure you're remembering things correctly?" I was stunned into silence. By the time I had gathered my thoughts to respond, Frank was making excuses to end the call. Similar conversations followed throughout the day. People I had known for decades, people I had helped in countless ways, all seemed to have been contacted by Gregory with the same story. I was experiencing cognitive decline. I was making poor financial decisions. Gregory had reluctantly stepped in to protect me from myself, and they had believed him. Some seemed genuinely concerned for my well-being. Others appeared uncomfortable, eager to distance themselves from my apparent decline. A few were clearly reconsidering business arrangements we had in place. By evening, I felt more isolated than I had since Judith's death. I sat in the small armchair by the window of my hotel room, watching the sunset paint the parking lot in shades of orange and purple, and wondered if this was how my life would end, forgotten by friends, betrayed by family, reduced to living out my remaining days in an anonymous hotel room. The phone rang, breaking my dark reverie. It was Thomas. "I've been making some calls," he said without preamble. "Gregory has been busy spreading his version of events far and wide." "I've discovered that," I replied bitterly. "Even Frank Wilson thinks I'm losing my mind." "Well, I have some news that might cheer you up. Remember those security cameras you had installed in the penthouse before you left? 6 months earlier, I had begun to notice small things missing from my home. Nothing valuable at first, just personal items. Photographs, letters, mementos from my life with Judith. I initially thought I might be misplacing things, another fear related to aging. But when my grandfather's pocket watch disappeared from my bedside table, I decided to take precautions. The system I installed was discreet. Small cameras in common areas, nothing in bathrooms or bedrooms. The feed was accessible remotely through a secure app on my phone, with footage backed up to a cloud server. I had almost forgotten about it during my time in Alaska, checking it only occasionally to ensure everything was in order at home. "Did you access the footage?" I asked Thomas, suddenly alert. "I did. And Blaze, you need to see this. How soon can you come to my office?" An hour later, I was sitting in Thomas's office watching footage that made my blood boil. There was Gregory, bringing real estate agents through my home while I was away. There he was, forging my signature on documents spread across my own dining room table. And most damning of all, there he was, the day after the sale closed, popping champagne with friends in my living room. "This place was such a money pit," Gregory told someone off camera, his words slightly slurred from alcohol. "Dad was too sentimental about it because Mom helped design it or whatever. But I got $7.5 million for it." $7.5? That solves a lot of problems, a female voice asked. "Won't your dad be upset when he gets back from his trip?" Gregory laughed. "What's he going to do about it? I've got power of attorney. The official story is that dear old dad is losing his marbles and needed to downsize. By the time he figures out how to challenge it legally, I'll be long gone. Maybe somewhere with no extradition treaty." He laughed again, and the sound of clinking glasses followed. I felt physically ill watching my son celebrate stealing my home, the home that contained so many memories of his mother. "Turn it off," I said to Thomas. "I've seen enough." Thomas stopped the playback and leaned back in his chair. "There's more, but that gives you the gist. The good news is that this footage completely undermines any claim that you authorized the sale or that Gregory was acting in your best interest." "Can we get the penthouse back?" I asked. "That's where things get complicated," Thomas replied. "Gregory had legal power of attorney. The sale itself might be technically legal, even if it was ethically reprehensible. We'd need to prove the power of attorney was fraudulently obtained. I thought about the doctor, Dr. Parks, who had supposedly diagnosed me with early dementia. "The medical evaluation," I said slowly. "If we can prove that was falsified." Thomas nodded. "Exactly. I've already started looking into Dr. Parks. He's not a specialist in geriatric medicine or neurology. He's a general practitioner with a small practice across town. I find it interesting that Gregory specifically chose a doctor you had never seen before, one who wouldn't know your baseline cognitive function. So we fight this," I said, determination replacing despair. "We prove I'm competent, invalidate the power of attorney, and challenge the sale." "Yes," Thomas agreed. "But there's something else you should see." He clicked to another video file. This one showed Gregory in my home office, searching through drawers, pulling out files and talking on the phone. "No, I'm telling you, I can't find it," he said to the person on the other end. "He must have moved the trust documents somewhere else. Without those, I can't touch the bigger assets." I sat up straighter. "When was this recorded?" 2 days after you left for Alaska," Thomas replied. "It seems Gregory's plan wasn't limited to selling the penthouse. He was looking for a way to access your primary investment accounts as well." "The Parker Trust," I murmured. "The Parker Trust was named for Judith's maiden name, established years ago to hold the majority of my assets. It was structured with multiple layers of protection, requiring specific documentation and multiple signatures to access or modify. The key documents were indeed not in my home office. They were in a safe deposit box, accessible only to me and Thomas." "He couldn't have accessed it," Thomas confirmed. "The protections we put in place held, But this shows his intent went far beyond just the penthouse. I sat back, processing this new information. The betrayal was even more comprehensive than I had initially realized. Gregory hadn't just opportunistically sold my home, he had been systematically searching for ways to strip me of everything. "There's one more thing," Thomas said, his expression unreadable. "The timing of all this. The sale closed remarkably quickly, especially for a high-end property like your penthouse." I looked into the buyers. He pushed a file across the desk. Inside was information about the Watson family, who I had found living in my penthouse. James Watson was an executive at Meridian Capital, a firm known for high-risk, high-reward investments. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "Meridian Capital has been in financial trouble. There are rumors of improper fund management, possibly even a Ponzi scheme. The SEC has been investigating. And guess who has been spotted meeting with James Watson multiple times over the past year?" The pieces clicked into place. Gregory. Thomas nodded grimly. "I think Gregory may have been investing with them. If they're about to collapse, he'd lose everything," I finished. "He needed liquid assets fast. And he found 7.5 million of them in your penthouse," Thomas concluded. "The question is, what do we do now?" That night, back at the Oakwood, I couldn't sleep again, but for a different reason. A plan was forming in my mind, a plan that would not only get my home back, but finally teach my son the lesson I had failed to teach him for over 40 years. The morning after watching the security footage, I sat in my hotel room making a list of everything Gregory had taken from me. Beyond the penthouse itself, there were irreplaceable items inside. Judith's jewelry collection, which I had planned to pass down to future grandchildren. Photographs and home videos, documenting our family history. The handcrafted furniture we had collected over decades. Artwork chosen together during our travels. Most painfully, the small memory box containing locks of Judith's hair, the cards she had written for Gregory's future birthdays after knowing she wouldn't live to give them to him personally, and the last anniversary gift she had given me, a pocket watch engraved with "Time gives us only love," our private reminder to cherish every moment. The financial loss was substantial, but the emotional toll was immeasurable. Yet as I continued writing, a strange calm settled over me. I had been blind to Gregory's true nature for too long, making excuses, enabling his worst behaviors. Perhaps this final, extreme betrayal was what I needed to finally see clearly. What Gregory didn't know, what I hadn't told a soul until now, was that his actions hadn't caught me entirely unprepared. For over a year, I had been sensing something was wrong. Small discrepancies in my accounts, missing documents, Gregory's increasingly erratic behavior, and desperate requests for money. My instincts as a businessman, honed over decades of detecting when deals weren't quite right, had been quietly alerting me that something was amiss in my personal life. 3 months before my Alaska trip, I had hired a private investigator, Sam Reeves, a former police detective, recommended by Thomas. Sam had been discreetly tracking Gregory's activities, documenting his meetings with known gamblers, his visits to underground poker games, his trips to Las Vegas. Most concerning were his meetings with James Watson and others from Meridian Capital, a firm already under scrutiny for financial irregularities. 2 weeks before leaving for Alaska, I received Sam's comprehensive report. It detailed Gregory's gambling debts, estimated at over $2 million, owed to increasingly dangerous people. It documented his desperate attempts to secure loans from less than reputable sources. Most disturbingly, it included photographs of Gregory meeting with Dr. Parks, the physician who would later sign off on my supposed dementia diagnosis. The evidence was impossible to deny, yet facing it meant acknowledging a devastating truth. My son was not just flawed or struggling. He was actively working to harm me for his own gain. I called Thomas immediately after reading the report. We met in his office late that evening, and I laid everything out for him. "I need to protect myself," I told him, my voice steady despite the pain tearing through me. "And I need to do it in a way that might, just might, finally force Gregory to take responsibility for his actions." That night, we developed a strategy. Thomas would immediately begin the process of invalidating the existing power of attorney that Gregory had fraudulently obtained. Meanwhile, I would transfer my most significant assets to a new, even more secure trust structure with Thomas as the sole trustee. The penthouse would be left deliberately vulnerable, the only major asset Gregory could easily access. "You're using it as bait," Thomas observed, his expression concerned. "You know he'll try to take it." "I'm counting on it," I replied. "And I'll have evidence of every step he takes." "You're using it as bait," Thomas observed, his expression concerned. You know he'll try to take it. Before leaving for Alaska, I had a full neurological evaluation performed by Dr. Eleanor Walsh, a respected specialist, with no connection to Gregory. Her thorough assessment confirmed what I already knew. I was completely mentally competent, with no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment. This evaluation was notarized and filed with multiple trusted parties, including Thomas, my accountant, and my banker. The most difficult part was maintaining a normal relationship with Gregory while these preparations were underway. I had to pretend nothing had changed, that I still trusted him completely. The day before leaving for Alaska, we had dinner together at my penthouse. He asked detailed questions about my itinerary, when I would be completely out of cell phone range, how long I planned to stay in each remote fishing lodge. I answered truthfully, knowing he was gathering information to use against me. As we said goodbye that night, Gregory hugged me, something he rarely did anymore. "Have a great trip, Dad," he said. "Don't worry about anything here. I'll take care of everything." The double meaning of his words made my stomach turn, but I smiled and thanked him. It was the last time I would see him until my return. While in Alaska, I maintained minimal contact, sending occasional texts when I had service, sharing photos of my catches, playing the role of the oblivious father enjoying his vacation. Meanwhile, I was receiving encrypted updates from Thomas about Gregory's activities back home, the power of attorney being exercised, the real estate agents visiting the penthouse, the sale being finalized with unusual speed. Each update was a knife to the heart, but also confirmation that the plan was working. Gregory was documenting his own betrayal more thoroughly than any investigation could have. The final piece fell into place the day before I flew home. Thomas called to confirm the sale had closed. The money had been transferred to accounts Gregory controlled, and most importantly, the Watson family had moved into the penthouse. "Everything is in place, Blaze," Thomas said. "The moment you confirm the Watsons are in your home, we move forward with the criminal complaint. Gregory will be facing charges of fraud, financial elder abuse, and theft. The evidence is overwhelming." I sat on the bed in my rustic fishing cabin, looking out at the pristine Alaskan wilderness one last time. "There's one more thing I want to try first," I told Thomas. "One last chance for Gregory to come clean on his own." Thomas was silent for a moment. "You still want to save him, don't you? After everything he's done?" "He's my son," I said simply. "I failed him in many ways. I have to try once more to reach him before bringing the full weight of the law down on his head." The next day, I flew back to the city, took a taxi directly to the Wellington, and discovered strangers living in my home. When Gregory arrived, smirking and cruel with his, "You're homeless now, old man" comment, I asked him a simple question. "Are you sure about that?" I told him about the document I had signed yesterday, the day before returning. What I didn't specify was that the document in question was the final authorization for Thomas to proceed with legal action, not just to recover my property, but to hold Gregory accountable for his crimes. The collapse of Gregory's face in that moment told me everything I needed to know. He had believed his plan was perfect. He had no idea I'd been 10 steps ahead of him all along. Back in Thomas's office the next day, I explained my decision. "The trust documents Gregory was searching for," I said. "They were never at risk. I've spent the past year quietly consolidating my assets into the new trust structure we created, with you as trustee. The only major asset I deliberately left vulnerable was the penthouse." "Setting a trap," Thomas nodded, and Gregory walked right into it. "More than that," I continued. "The buyers, the Watson family. You did background checks on them?" "Thoroughly," Thomas confirmed. "James Watson is exactly who you thought, connected to Meridian Capital, likely involved in the investment scheme Gregory was caught up in." "And the property transfer? The $7.5 million?" Thomas smiled grimly. "The money was transferred to accounts we were monitoring. We have records of every transaction." Within hours, Gregory began moving funds to various other accounts, including several offshore destinations. But most interesting was a transfer of $2 million to an account belonging to someone named Vincent Caruso. The name confirmed my worst fears. Vincent Caruso was known in certain circles as a loan shark with connections to organized crime. If Gregory owed him money, the situation was even more dangerous than I had imagined. "So what happens now?" Thomas asked. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what needed to be done. "Now we move forward with the plan. All of it, the criminal complaint, the fraud charges, the evidence from the security cameras. Everything. And the penthouse? That's where things get interesting," I replied. "The Watsons aren't innocent in this. James Watson had to know something was suspicious about the sale. The price was well below market value. The closing rushed. No questions asked about why I wasn't present for any part of the transaction. You think they were complicit? Thomas asked. I nodded. I think they saw an opportunity and took it. Ethics be damned. But that creates an opportunity for us as well. I outlined the next phase of the plan, watching Thomas's expression shift from concern to grudging admiration. It's risky, he said when I finished. But if it works, it will work, I said with conviction. And it will accomplish everything we need it to recover my home, hold Gregory accountable, and just maybe, finally teach him the lesson I've failed to teach him his entire life. As I left Thomas's office that day, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and resolve. The path ahead would be painful, but necessary. For the first time in decades, I would be treating Gregory not as the child I wanted to protect, but as the adult he had chosen to become, with all the consequences that entailed. The conference room at Thomas's law firm was deliberately intimidating. 22nd floor views of the city skyline. The long mahogany table gleaming under recessed lighting. Legal diplomas and awards covering one wall. It was a room designed to make people feel small and outmatched a room where careers and fortunes had been made and destroyed. I arrived early, taking a seat at the head of the table. Thomas sat to my right, a thick folder of documents before him, his expression professionally neutral. Sam Reeves, the private investigator, sat to my left, a laptop open and ready. We waited in silence as the minute hand ticked toward 10 o'clock. Gregory arrived 5 minutes late, a power move he had likely learned from some business seminar. He wore an expensive suit I had never seen before, his hair freshly cut, his demeanor radiating confidence. If he was worried about this meeting, he didn't show it. Dad, he said with a nod in my direction. Then, Thomas, with considerably less warmth. He took a seat at the opposite end of the table, pulling out his phone and placing it face up beside him, another power move suggesting he had more important things to attend to. Gregory, I said, keeping my voice even. Thank you for coming. He smiled thinly. Of course. I'm concerned about you. Living in that hotel can't be good for a man your age. I've been looking into some senior living options that might be more appropriate for your situation. The casual cruelty of his words was breathtaking. Not only had he sold my home out from under me, but now he was suggesting I should be in assisted living. Thomas cleared his throat. Before we discuss living arrangements, we have some matters to address regarding the sale of Blaze's penthouse. Gregory's smile didn't waver. I don't see what there is to discuss. As Dad's legal representative with power of attorney, I made a decision that was in his best interest. The penthouse was too large, required too much maintenance, and represented an unnecessary expense. The proceeds from the sale have been invested appropriately. Invested where exactly? I asked quietly. For the first time, a flicker of unease crossed Gregory's face. In a diversified portfolio, I can have the financial advisor send the details if you're curious. Thomas opened his folder and removed a stack of papers. Let's start with the power of attorney that gave you the legal authority to sell the property. He slid the document across the table. Gregory glanced at it without touching it, his expression bored. Yes, that's it. Signed and notarized 6 months ago. Completely legal. And the basis for this power of attorney? Thomas continued. Gregory shifted slightly in his chair. Dad was showing signs of cognitive decline. Dr. Parks conducted an evaluation and determined that assistance with financial matters would be appropriate. Interesting, Thomas said, removing another document from his folder. Because we have here a comprehensive neurological evaluation performed by Dr. Eleanor Walsh, one of the leading geriatric specialists in the country, conducted 1 week before the Alaska trip. Her assessment shows no cognitive impairment whatsoever. He slid this document across the table as well. Gregory didn't even glance at it. Different doctors can have different opinions, he said dismissively, and conditions can change over time. They certainly can, Thomas agreed. Which is why we also have this. He produced a third document. This is a statement from Dr. Parks, given under oath yesterday, admitting that he never performed a proper cognitive evaluation of Blaze. He states that you paid him $20,000 to sign paperwork indicating cognitive decline without a thorough examination. Gregory's confident expression faltered. That's ridiculous. Parks is lying. Is he? Thomas asked. Because we also have bank records showing a transfer of exactly $20,000 from your account to his, 2 days after the supposed evaluation. Gregory's face hardened. This is absurd. Dad clearly needs help. He's paranoid, making accusations. Let's move on to the security footage, I interjected, nodding to Sam. Sam turned his laptop so Gregory could see the screen. Without comment, he played the clips showing Gregory bringing real estate agents through the penthouse, forging my signature on documents, and celebrating the sale with champagne. As the video of his champagne toast played, Gregory's words echoed through the conference room. By the time he figures out how to challenge it legally, I'll be long gone. Maybe somewhere with no extradition treaty. Gregory's face had drained of color. He reached for his water glass, his hand visibly shaking. Where did you get this? You were spying on me? That's illegal. You can't record someone without their knowledge. Actually, Thomas replied, Blaze can install security cameras in his own home. There were notices posted, as required by law. Small ones, in the entryway and kitchen. You might not have noticed them. Gregory's eyes darted around the room, his confidence crumbling visibly. Look, he said, his tone shifting to conciliatory. Maybe I made some mistakes in how this was handled. But Dad really is better off not having to maintain that huge penthouse. And the money is safe, I promise. Is it? I asked. All $7.5 million? Gregory swallowed hard. Yes, of course. So you didn't transfer $2 million to Vincent Caruso? I asked quietly. The blood drained from Gregory's face. How did you? Who told you about Caruso? We've been monitoring all financial transactions since the sale closed, Thomas explained. Every transfer, every account. We know exactly where the money has gone. Gregory's composure cracked completely. You don't understand, he said, his voice suddenly desperate. Caruso isn't someone you can stall or negotiate with. I needed that money or what? I pressed. Or he would have hurt me, Gregory whispered. He had already sent guys to rough me up once as a warning. I was desperate. For the first time since discovering his betrayal, I felt a flicker of paternal concern. But I tamped it down. Gregory had manipulated my emotions for decades. This could easily be another performance. So you sold my home to pay your gambling debts, I said flatly. Gregory didn't deny it. What choice did I have? You could have come to me, I said. Told me the truth. Asked for help. He laughed bitterly. Right? Like you would have given me that kind of money after all the disappointments I've been to you. We'll never know, will we? Because you chose theft and fraud instead. Gregory's desperation turned to anger. What do you want from me, Dad? You want me to beg? Fine. I'm begging. I need help. I'm in trouble. Is that what you want to hear? What I want, I said evenly, is for you to finally face the consequences of your actions. Thomas cleared his throat again. Gregory, the evidence we've gathered is comprehensive and damning. Fraud, elder financial abuse, theft, forgery. These are serious crimes with substantial penalties. We're prepared to file charges today. Gregory paled further. You would do that? Your own son? He asked me incredulously. You sold my home, I replied. You called me homeless. You tried to have me declared incompetent. What exactly did you expect would happen when I discovered the truth? For a moment, Gregory seemed genuinely confused, as if the idea that his actions might have consequences had never occurred to him. Then his expression hardened. Fine. File your charges. I'll fight them. It'll be your word against mine. By the time this gets through the courts, I'll have spent every penny. You'll never see a dime. Thomas smiled for the first time since the meeting began. That's where you're wrong, Gregory. You see, the buyers of the penthouse, James and Helen Watson, aren't who you think they are. Gregory froze. What do you mean? James Watson is indeed an executive at Meridian Capital, Thomas explained. But Helen Watson is actually federal agent Helen Watkins. Meridian Capital has been under investigation for securities fraud for over a year. When we discovered your connection to them, we contacted the appropriate authorities. I leaned forward. The Watsons were never going to buy my penthouse, Gregory. They were monitoring you, documenting your connection to a financial crime network the government has been building a case against for months. Your fraudulent sale gave them exactly the evidence they needed. Gregory's face crumpled as understanding dawned. This was a setup? Not initially, I said truthfully. We didn't know about your connection to Meridian until after you started shopping my penthouse around. But once we did, we contacted the FBI. They were very interested in using the situation to gather evidence. So the sale. It's not real? Gregory asked, his voice small. Oh, it's real enough, Thomas replied. Money changed hands. Documents were signed. But the transaction was monitored and documented by federal agents from start to finish. And now they have evidence implicating not just you, but James Watson, Vincent Caruso, and everyone else involved in this web of financial crimes. Gregory collapsed back in his chair, the full weight of his situation finally hitting him. "I'm going to prison," he whispered. "That depends," I said, nodding to Thomas. Thomas removed a final document from his folder and placed it before Gregory. "This is a cooperation agreement. If you provide complete and truthful information about Meridian Capital, Vincent Caruso, and all related financial dealings, the U.S. Attorney is prepared to recommend leniency in your case." Gregory stared at the document, then at me. "And what about you? What about the penthouse?" "The penthouse will be returned to me as stolen property," I said. "The Watsons will be moving out as we speak. As for you and me, that depends entirely on what you do now." Gregory's hands shook as he reached for the document. "I don't have a choice, do I?" "You always have a choice, Gregory," I said quietly. "You've just never wanted to face the consequences of making the wrong one. Today, that changes." He looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear, anger, and something I hadn't seen in a very long time, genuine remorse. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I never meant for it to go this far." As he signed the cooperation agreement, I felt no triumph, no vindication, only a deep sadness for what our relationship had become, and a faint, fragile hope that perhaps finally my son might begin the long journey toward becoming the man I had always believed he could be. The meeting with the federal agents lasted over 6 hours. Gregory, now fully aware of his predicament, provided detailed information about his involvement with Meridian Capital, his gambling debts to Vincent Caruso, and the network of financial crimes he had become entangled in. As the hours passed, the extent of his troubles became increasingly clear. "I'm in for $2.8 million with Caruso," Gregory admitted, his voice hollow. "Not the $2 million I transferred. There's still $800,000 outstanding." Agent Watkins, who had been posing as Helen Watson, made a note. "And the deadline for this payment?" "End of this week," Gregory said, his face ashen. "That's why I needed the penthouse sale to close so quickly. Caruso had already sent 2 guys to deliver a message. They caught me coming out of my apartment, dragged me into an alley." He pulled up his shirt to reveal fading bruises along his ribs, said next time it would be broken bones, or worse. I felt physically ill seeing the evidence of violence on my son's body, despite everything he had done. Parent love, I realized, never fully dies, even when betrayed so completely. "We'll arrange protection," Agent Watkins said, though her tone suggested this was routine rather than special consideration. "But you understand that your cooperation means complete cooperation. Every name. Every transaction. Every detail." Gregory nodded numbly. "I understand." When the agents finally left, taking Gregory's signed statements with them, only Thomas, Gregory, and I remained in the conference room. The energy had drained from all of us, leaving behind an exhausted silence. "What happens now?" Gregory finally asked, looking not at Thomas, but at me. "You'll be required to surrender your passport," Thomas explained clinically. "There will be restrictions on your movements. You'll need to remain available for additional questioning. The investigation will likely take months to complete." "And after that?" Gregory pressed. "Best case scenario? With full cooperation, you're looking at a reduced sentence, possibly probation, given this is your first criminal offense. Worst case? 5 to 10 years. Gregory closed his eyes, absorbing this reality. When he opened them again, there was no trace of his earlier arrogance or cunning. For perhaps the first time in his adult life, he looked completely unmasked, the frightened, flawed man, beneath all the pretense. "Can I go?" he asked quietly. Thomas glanced at me, and I nodded. "We're done for today," Thomas confirmed. Gregory gathered his things slowly, as if each movement required deliberate thought. At the door, he paused and turned back. "The penthouse," he said. "Is it really yours again?" "Yes," I replied. "The federal agents are handling the transition. I should be able to return home by tomorrow." Gregory nodded distantly. That's good." He seemed about to say something more, then simply turned and left. As the door closed behind him, Thomas released a long breath. "Well, that was even worse than I anticipated. The Caruso connection explains a lot. Gregory wasn't just gambling. He was in deep with some very dangerous people." I nodded, my own exhaustion catching up with me. I knew he had problems. I never imagined this scale. Thomas began gathering the documents, restoring order to the chaos of the day. "What now, Blaze? Will you press additional charges beyond what the federal case covers?" I hadn't allowed myself to consider this question until now. The evidence would support charges of elder abuse, fraud, theft, all serious crimes that could significantly increase Gregory's potential sentence. No, I said finally. What the federal case addresses is enough. Adding more charges won't undo what's been done. Thomas studied me for a moment. You're still trying to protect him. Not protect, I clarified. But not destroy him either. He's going to face significant consequences regardless. I don't need to pile on more. Thomas accepted this with a nod, though I could tell he didn't entirely agree. And what about your relationship with him? Is there anything left to salvage? The question hung in the air between us, impossible to answer definitively. I don't know, I admitted. That will depend on Gregory as much as on me. We finished organizing the paperwork in silence. As Thomas walked me out to the elevator, he asked one final question. Are you still planning to go through with the surgery next week? After all this, it might be prudent to postpone. I had almost forgotten about my heart condition in the chaos of recent events. No, I said firmly. No more delays. I need to get this fixed so I can deal with whatever comes next. Thomas nodded and gripped my shoulder. I'll be there. Whatever you need. Back at the Oakwood extended stay, I found Martha at the front desk. She smiled when she saw me. Well, you're looking better today. Good news? I'll be checking out tomorrow, I told her. My housing situation has been resolved. Wonderful, she exclaimed, genuine warmth in her voice. Though I have to say, we'll miss your cheerful presence around here. The gentle sarcasm made me smile despite everything. I wanted to thank you, I said. For the coffee that first morning. For the small kindnesses. They meant more than you know. Martha waved away my gratitude. It's nothing. We've all had our rough patches. As I turned to go, she called after me. Mr. Anderson? Whatever happened, I hope things work out with your son. I froze, turning back slowly. How did you know about my son? She gave a small, sad smile. The walls here are thin. I heard you on the phone, and, well, I recognize that particular kind of heartbreak. My daughter and I didn't speak for 7 years. Addiction issues. And now? I asked, suddenly needing to know there was hope somewhere in this situation. Now she's 5 years sober, works as a counselor helping others. We have Sunday dinner every week. Martha's eyes shone with quiet pride. It took hitting rock bottom for her to change. Sometimes that's what it takes. Her words stayed with me as I packed my few belongings that evening. Perhaps this was Gregory's rock bottom. Perhaps there was still hope for redemption, for healing. Or perhaps not. Only time would tell. My phone rang as I was finishing my packing. The screen showed a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. Dad? Gregory's voice sounded strange, subdued, almost slurred. Gregory? Are you all right? No, he said with a bitter laugh. Not even close to all right. I'm at the Riverside Bar on 7th. I've been trying to drink away today, but it's not working. My parental instincts flared. Gregory, with everything that's happened, getting drunk in public isn't wise. No, he said with a bitter laugh. Not even close to all right. I'm at the Riverside Bar on 7th. I've been trying to drink away today, but it's not working. He was silent for a moment, and I heard the clink of ice in a glass. Do you hate me? He asked suddenly, his voice small. After everything I've done, you must hate me. The question caught me off guard. No, I answered truthfully. I don't hate you. I'm angry, hurt, disappointed, but I don't hate you, Gregory. You should, he said. I've been terrible to you. All you ever did was try to help me, and I just took and took and took. And then I tried to take everything. His words were running together, emotion and alcohol blurring his speech. Why? I asked. The question that had been haunting me for weeks. Why did you do it? Was it just the gambling debts, or was there more to it? There was a long pause, filled only with the ambient sounds of the bar in the background. I've always felt like I was living in your shadow, he finally said. The great Blaze Anderson, self-made man, respected by everyone. How was I supposed to measure up to that? It was easier to just take shortcuts, to pretend I was successful without doing the work. It was a painfully honest admission, one that cut to the heart of our dysfunctional relationship. And then Mom died, he continued, his voice breaking. And instead of being there, you buried yourself in work. I was 16, Dad. 16 and alone. The accusation stung because it contained truth. In my grief, I had indeed retreated to the familiar comfort of work, leaving Gregory to navigate his own loss, largely alone. You're right, I said quietly. I failed you then. I was so lost in my own pain that I couldn't see yours. I'm sorry for that, Gregory. Truly sorry. He made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Now you apologize. 26 years later. It's never too late to acknowledge mistakes, I said. Mine or yours. Another long silence followed. When Gregory spoke again, his voice had changed, a desperate edge creeping in. These people, Caruso's people. They're not going to care about federal investigations or cooperation agreements. They're going to want their money. The agents promised protection, I reminded him. You don't understand these people, Gregory insisted, fear evident in his voice. They don't play by normal rules. I'm a dead man, Dad. A dead man walking. I felt a chill run through me at his words. Where are you exactly? I'm coming to get you. No, he said quickly. No, don't. I shouldn't have called. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. And goodbye. The line went dead. I immediately tried calling back, but the call went straight to voicemail. With shaking hands, I dialed Thomas, explaining the situation as I rushed to get my coat. I'm calling Agent Watkins now, Thomas assured me. They'll find him. Just stay put. But I couldn't stay put. My son, for all his flaws and betrayals, was in danger, possibly suicidal. I had to find him. I took a taxi to the Riverside bar, but Gregory was already gone. The bartender remembered him, guy in the expensive suit, drinking scotch like it was water, but had no idea where he'd gone. I spent the next 3 hours searching nearby bars and hotels, growing increasingly frantic. Finally, my phone rang again. Agent Watkins. We've located your son, Mr. Anderson, she said, her professional tone giving nothing away. He's at Memorial Hospital. There was an incident. My heart nearly stopped. Is he? He's alive, she assured me quickly. But you should get down here. The next hour passed in a blur. The taxi ride to the hospital, the antiseptic smell of the emergency room, the federal agent posted outside a treatment room, and finally, Gregory himself, pale and bandaged, an IV in his arm. 2 men caught up with him behind the riverside, Agent Watkins explained quietly. Caruso's people, we assume. They worked him over pretty thoroughly. Broken ribs, concussion, internal bruising. But he'll recover. I looked at my son, so vulnerable in the hospital bed, and felt the weight of everything that had happened between us. The betrayals, the lies, the theft, and beneath it all, the broken relationship that had made it all possible. Can I have a moment with him? I asked. Agent Watkins nodded and stepped outside. I moved to Gregory's bedside, taking in his battered face, the monitoring equipment, the restraint loosely fastened to his wrist. He was, after all, in federal custody even here. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then clearing as they landed on me. Dad? He croaked. I'm here, I said, taking his hand gently. They found me, he whispered, just like I said they would. I nodded. But you're safe now. The agents will make sure of that. They found me, he whispered, just like I said they would. I don't know what's going to happen, I answered honestly, but whatever it is, you won't face it alone, not this time. Tears filled his eyes. Why would you help me after what I did? I struggled to find the right words. Because you're my son. Because I failed you in important ways. Because I hope it's not too late for both of us to do better. A tear slipped down Gregory's cheek. I don't deserve another chance. Maybe not, I agreed. But you're getting one anyway. What you do with it is up to you. We sat in silence for a while, the beeping of monitors marking time. Finally, Gregory squeezed my hand weakly. There's something else you should know, he said. Something I haven't told anyone. I waited, wondering what new revelation could possibly follow everything that had already come to light. I have a gambling addiction, he said, the words seeming to cost him physically. I've known it for years but couldn't admit it. Wouldn't admit it. I need help. It was such a simple admission, yet I understood immediately how monumental it was. After a lifetime of excuses, blame-shifting, and denial, Gregory was finally taking responsibility for his own actions. Then you'll get help, I promised. Whatever it takes. As I left the hospital that night, I felt both drained and strangely peaceful. The situation with Gregory was far from resolved. He faced serious legal consequences, a long recovery from his injuries, and the even longer journey of addiction treatment. Our relationship remained deeply damaged, perhaps irreparably so. Yet for the first time in years, perhaps decades, we had spoken to each other with complete honesty. No manipulation, no enabling, just truth, painful as it was. And in that truth, I found a glimmer of hope that we might both finally heal. 6 months passed before I again sat across from Gregory in a setting that wasn't a hospital room, a courtroom, or a federal building. The weather had turned from the chill of late fall to the depths of winter, then to spring's tentative warmth, and finally to the full bloom of early summer. During those months, my life had transformed in ways both physical and emotional. The heart surgery I had postponed for so long was finally performed 2 weeks after Gregory's hospitalization. The procedure was successful, though recovery proved more challenging than anticipated. At 68, the body doesn't bounce back quickly from having its chest opened and its most vital organ repaired. Thomas arranged for a home healthcare nurse to assist me during the first weeks back in my penthouse. The familiar surroundings provided comfort, though the space felt different knowing how close I had come to losing it. I found myself appreciating details I had previously taken for granted, the way morning light filtered through the eastern windows, the distant hum of the city below, the specific creak of the floorboard near Judith's reading nook. As for Gregory, his path had been considerably more difficult. His cooperation with federal authorities proved valuable enough to earn him a reduced sentence 5 years, with eligibility for parole after 3, plus 5 years of supervised release. The charges included wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. As promised, I did not pursue additional elder abuse or theft charges, though the judge was well aware of those aspects of the case. Before beginning his sentence, Gregory spent 90 days in an inpatient rehabilitation program for gambling addiction. It was a condition I had insisted upon and had offered to pay for a final act of fatherly support before Gregory would truly have to stand on his own. Now, on a warm June afternoon, we sat at a small table in the visiting area of the minimum security federal prison where Gregory was serving his time. 3 months into his sentence, he looked different, thinner, with his designer haircut grown out and the perpetual tan he had maintained faded to prison pallor. But the most striking change was in his eyes. The calculating, slightly manic quality that had characterized his gaze for years was gone, replaced by something clearer, steadier. "You look well, Dad," he said after we exchanged awkward greetings. "The surgery was successful?" I struggled to find the right words. "Because you're my son. Because I failed you in important ways. Because I hope it's not too late for both of us to do better." "I'm glad," Gregory said, and I believed he meant it. "Thomas mentioned you're back at work part-time?" I nodded. "Full recovery. The doctor says my heart is stronger now than it has been in years." Gregory nodded thoughtfully. "Balance. That's something we talk about a lot in the program here." He tapped a workbook on the table beside him. "Continuing the addiction treatment. 2 meetings a week. Counseling sessions. It's actually helpful." "I'm glad to hear that," I said sincerely. A slightly uncomfortable silence fell between us. We had exchanged letters during his rehabilitation stay and the early months of his incarceration, but this was our first face-to-face conversation without lawyers, agents, or medical personnel present since the confrontation in Thomas's office. "I've been thinking a lot about Mom," Gregory said unexpectedly, "about how she would feel about all this, about me ending up here." The mention of Judith caught me off guard. Gregory rarely spoke of his mother. "She would be heartbroken," I said honestly. "But she would never stop loving you. That wasn't in her nature." Gregory's eyes glistened. "I don't remember enough about her. That's one of the things that's been eating at me. I was 16 when she died. Old enough to have solid memories, but they're fading. I can't remember the sound of her voice anymore." I hadn't expected this conversation, but I welcomed it. "She had a laugh that came from deep inside her," I told him. "When something really struck her funny, she would laugh until tears ran down her face. And she sang all the time little snatches of songs while she was cooking or grading papers. She was terrible at carrying a tune, but it never stopped her." Gregory listened intently, hunger for these details evident in his expression. "What else? Please." For the next hour, I shared memories of Judith, the time she spent an entire night making 200 cupcakes for Gregory's elementary school fundraiser, only to trip on the front step and send them all tumbling across the lawn. The way she insisted on reading aloud the final chapter of each Harry Potter book because she couldn't bear for Gregory to experience the emotional moments alone. Her tradition of hiding small, thoughtful gifts around the house before business trips so Gregory would find a new surprise each day she was gone. "I wish I had valued those things more," Gregory said quietly when I finished. "I was so angry after she died. At her for leaving. At you for burying yourself in work. At the world for continuing as if nothing had happened. I think that anger never really went away. It just transformed into something else, something ugly." I nodded, understanding. I was angry too, and lost. I didn't know how to raise a teenage boy on my own, how to help you with your grief, when I could barely manage my own. Work was the only thing that made sense to me. The only place where I felt competent? We were both lost, Gregory acknowledged. And we never found our way back to each other. Until now, perhaps, I suggested cautiously. Gregory's expression was grave, but hopeful. I'd like that. But I also know I have to earn back your trust, if that's even possible after what I did. Trust is built one day at a time, I said. This conversation is a start. As our visiting time neared its end, Gregory became more serious. There's something specific I wanted to talk to you about. Something important. He pulled out a folder from under his workbook and placed it on the table. Part of my recovery program involves making amends where possible. Not just saying sorry, but trying to right the wrongs I've done when I can. He opened the folder to reveal a legal document. This is a formal relinquishment of any claim to inheritance or financial support from you. I've had the prison legal aid office help me prepare it properly. I want you to know that I expect nothing further from you financially. Whatever consequences come from my actions, I'll face them on my own. I stared at the document, moved by the gesture. Gregory, Please, he interrupted. This is important to me. I've taken advantage of your generosity for my entire adult life. That ends now. When I get out of here, I'm going to build my life on my own terms, without expecting you to bankroll it. I studied my son's face, seeing determination where there had once been calculation. I accept this, I said finally, taking the document. And I respect the intention behind it. Gregory visibly relaxed. Thank you. As the guard announced the end of visiting hours, Gregory hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, crudely wrapped package. I made this in the workshop program, he said, pushing it across the table. It's not much, but I unwrapped the package to find a small wooden box, hand-carved with a simple but elegant pattern. Opening it, I found it was lined with felt, perfectly sized to hold a pocket watch. For Mom's watch, Gregory said quietly. I remember how much it meant to you. The thoughtfulness of the gift stunned me. It showed an awareness of what truly mattered to me, something Gregory had rarely demonstrated in the past. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. This is perfect. We stood as the guard approached to end our visit. Awkwardly at first, then with increasing certainty, we embraced. It was our first genuine hug in many years. I'll visit again next month, I promised. I'd like that, Gregory replied, something like peace in his expression. The months that followed brought gradual but significant changes to my life. I continued scaling back my involvement in Anderson development, focusing instead on mentoring younger executives and exploring interests I had neglected during decades of single-minded focus on business. Martha from the Oakwood Extended Stay Hotel became an unexpected friend. After learning she had extensive experience in property management, I offered her a position overseeing one of my smaller residential buildings. Her practical approach and genuine care for tenants made her an exceptional manager, and our professional relationship evolved into a warm friendship that included regular dinners and occasional theater outings. Inspired by my own experience, I established the Anderson Foundation for Elder Justice, dedicating significant resources to helping older adults recognize, avoid, and recover from financial exploitation. Working with financial institutions, legal aid societies, and senior centers, the foundation developed educational programs and provided emergency assistance to victims of elder fraud. My relationship with Gregory continued to evolve through monthly visits and regular letters. He threw himself into available prison programs, earning his GED teaching certificate and leading financial literacy classes for fellow inmates. The irony of this role wasn't lost on either of us, but Gregory's first-hand knowledge of financial pitfalls made his teaching particularly effective. 3 years into his sentence, Gregory became eligible for parole. I attended the hearing, along with Thomas and, surprisingly, Agent Watkins, who testified to Gregory's complete cooperation and the value of information he had provided. His counselors spoke about his progress in addiction recovery and his contributions to prison education programs. When the parole board granted his release, effective in 30 days, Gregory's response was measured rather than triumphant. I have a lot of work still to do, he told me afterward. This isn't the end of anything, just a different phase of recovery. We had discussed his post-release plans extensively. Gregory would move into a halfway house initially, a condition of his parole. He had secured a job as an administrative assistant at a nonprofit organization that helped formerly incarcerated individuals re-enter the workforce, a position Agent Watkins had helped arrange. His salary would be modest, but sufficient for him to gradually build an independent life. I had offered to help financially, but Gregory had gently declined. I need to do this on my own, Dad. For the first time in my life, I need to know I can. On the day of his release, I picked Gregory up outside the prison gates. The man who walked toward my car bore little resemblance to the entitled, manipulative son who had sold my penthouse 3.5 years earlier. Gregory moved with a humbler posture, his expression open rather than guarded. He carried a single duffel bag containing everything he now owned in the world. The drive to the halfway house was quiet, both of us feeling the weight of this transition. As we neared the city, Gregory finally broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what I want to do long term," he said. "After parole is complete, when I have more freedom to choose." "Oh?" I prompted, curious. "I want to use my experience to help others," he said. "Working with gambling addicts, maybe, or with families affected by fraud." I understand both sides of that equation now. I nodded, hearing the sincerity in his voice. "I think you could do a lot of good there." "I know it won't be easy," he continued. "People will Google my name, find the news stories about what I did. I'll always carry that. But maybe that's part of making amends, using my mistakes to help others avoid the same path." I felt a surge of pride, something I hadn't expected to feel for Gregory ever again. "That takes courage," I said. "Real courage." As we pulled up to the halfway house, a plain brick building in a working-class neighborhood, Gregory gathered his bag. "I know this isn't how either of us imagined my life would turn out," he said. "The fancy education, the advantages you gave me. This isn't the return you expected on that investment." "Life isn't a balance sheet, Gregory," I replied. "And people aren't investments. You're my son. All I've ever truly wanted is for you to be a good man. It took a harder road than I would have chosen, but you're on that path now. That's what matters." Gregory's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to." "Sunday dinner," I said, changing the subject before we both became too emotional. "Once you're settled. Every week, I'll pick you up." Gregory smiled. "I'd like that." 6 months later, on my 70th birthday, I hosted a small gathering at my penthouse. Thomas was there with his wife, Martha came with her daughter, and a few other close friends joined us. Gregory, now working full-time and taking night classes toward a counseling certification, arrived carrying a small gift bag. Gregory smiled. "I'd like that." As conversations flowed around us, Gregory led me out to the terrace garden, the one designed by Judith all those years ago. In the gentle evening light, with the city spreading out below us, he handed me the gift. "I found it when they were clearing out the old hospital for renovation," Gregory explained. "A nurse had taken it during one of Mom's treatments. She remembered us and had kept the photo all these years. When she heard my name mentioned by another patient, she asked if I was Judith Anderson's son. I traced the image with my finger, drinking in this unexpected glimpse of my wife and son together, in a moment of joy, amid suffering. It reminds me that even in the darkest times, there can be light," Gregory said quietly. "Mom taught me that. I forgot it for a long time, but I remember now." I placed my hand on his shoulder, words failing me. Together, we stood looking out over the city as the sun began to set, two imperfect men who had nearly lost everything, including each other, but had somehow found a way back to what truly mattered. The road ahead would not be easy. Gregory still had years of parole to complete. He would face ongoing challenges with his addiction recovery and the stigma of his criminal record. Our relationship would continue to have difficult moments as we navigated our new boundaries and roles. But standing there in the garden Judith had designed, with her spirit somehow present between us, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The painful journey we had traveled, for all its heartbreak and betrayal, had ultimately led us here to authentic connection, to genuine accountability, to the possibility of redemption. That evening, after everyone had gone, and I was alone in the penthouse that had nearly been stolen from me, I took out the wooden box Gregory had made in prison. Inside, I placed Judith's pocket watch, with its engraving, "Time gives us only love." Looking at it now, I understood the message in a new way. Time itself is limited. The only thing it offers us that truly lasts is love. Not the enabling, indulgent love I had mistakenly shown Gregory for so many years, but the braver, truer love that embraces accountability alongside compassion. It had taken nearly losing everything, my home, my relationship with my son, perhaps even my life, to learn this essential truth. True love requires both kindness and strength, both forgiveness and boundaries, both generosity and wisdom. In finally finding this balance, I had discovered the most valuable lesson of my 70 years. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? What was your experience like, and how did it change your relationship? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might find meaning in it. Thank you for taking this journey with me. May you find the courage to love wisely and well, in all your relationships and throughout all the seasons of your life.